states a violation of the cardinal principles of international law and the United Nations Charter. Mr. President, these developments are especially alarming at a time when Somalia is demonstrating encouraging and tangible progress on its political and institutional trajectory. The federal government of Somalia, under the forward-looking vision and leadership of President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, has made notable strides in national reconciliation, constitutional reform, and the revitalization of state institutions. Positive trends in the financial sector, particularly the efforts related to economic legislation and preparations for inclusive one person, one vote elections, represent important steps towards consolidating Somalia's democracy and stability. Similarly, the phased 2-year transition of the United Nations presence in Somalia is progressing smoothly. The handover of responsibilities under the first phase of the United Nations Transitional Assistance Mission in Somalia has been completed, and the roadmap for the second and final phase has been finalized, with the mission scheduled to cease operations on 31st October 2026. These gains reflect a Somali-owned, Somali-led trajectory towards political reconciliation and state building. This positive momentum must be protected and reinforced, not undermined by actions that risk fragmenting the country and reversing hard-won progress. Pakistan also acknowledges the sacrifices and resilience of the Somali people and its security forces, supported by UN AU missions in confronting the persistent threat posed by Al-Shabaab and its affiliates. Continued predictable support for Somalia's security sector and stabilization efforts remain indispensable for preserving the hard-won gains against terrorism. Therefore, at this pivotal juncture, when Somalia is focused on defeating extremism, any action that diverts attention, weakens cohesion, or fuels division is profoundly irresponsible. Mr. President, against the backdrop of Israel's previous references to Somaliland of the Federal Republic of Somalia as a destination for the deportation of Palestinian people, especially from Gaza, its unlawful recognition of Somaliland region of Somalia is deeply troubling. For decades, Israel's dispossession and occupation of Palestinian land have been a central source of instability and conflict in the Middle East. It is now exporting this destabilizing conduct to the Horn of Africa, with serious implications for regional peace and security. Pakistan unequivocally rejects any proposals or plans aimed at the forced displacement of Palestinians. Security Council Resolution 2803 endorsed President Trump's comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict, which unequivocally states, I quote, "No one will be forced to leave Gaza," unquote. Any actions that advocate or imply displacement or resettlement not only violate international law, but also undermine the prospect of a just and lasting peace. We reaffirm our steadfast support for the Palestinian people in their legitimate struggle for self-determination. The only path to lasting peace and stability lies in the realization of an independent, contiguous, and sovereign state of Palestine on pre-1967 borders, with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital. In conclusion, Mr. President, Pakistan calls upon the Security Council and the broader international community to speak with one voice and reject all actions that undermine Somalia's unity and territorial integrity. On our part, we remain firmly and resolutely committed to standing with the government and people of Somalia in the country's march towards peace and prosperity. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
President, we thank Assistant Secretary General Khalid Kiari for his briefing. We, much like the majority of our Security Council colleagues, we are deeply concerned by Israel's politically motivated decision to recognize the independence of Somaliland. This decision is at odds with the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the unity of the Federal Republic of Somalia. We very much understand the well-founded reaction to this decision on the part of the government of the Federal Republic of Somalia, the African Union leadership, regional states, and Arab and Muslim countries. We are concerned by potential consequences, including about a potential escalation of tensions in the Horn of Africa and beyond. In principle, we are in favor of settling intra-Somalian contradictions on the basis of inclusive national dialogue without any external interference. We support Mogadishu's efforts to resolve security threats, to establish lasting peace, and to implement its sovereign priorities, factoring in the cultural and historical diversity of this multi-ethnic nation. We call on international players not to attempt to further their own geopolitical regions in the Horn of Africa region by capitalizing on the systemic problems of African states. We'd also like to emphasize that decisions akin to the one taken by the Israeli cabinet risk further complicating the efforts of Mogadishu and its partners' efforts to combat al-Shabaab terrorists. Colleagues, just last week, speaking in this very chamber on the topic of the vote on the Security Council resolution on AWESOM, the AU Support and Stabilization Mission in Somalia, members of this council spoke at length about the price that's been paid for these efforts. Above all, the price involved thousands of lives laid down by African peacekeepers, Somalian security forces, and civilians. We cannot forget this. On a separate note, it's worth noting that current complex challenges we see in Somalia are, to a large extent, the consequences of the onerous legacy of the era of Western colonialism. The same can be said for other African states. I think it's an open secret to all in this chamber where the root causes of the majority of territorial disputes and inter-ethnic and interfaith contradictions in contemporary Africa lie. The Russian Federation and the USSR before it constantly spoke of this, both at the Security Council and at the General Assembly. Together with a wide array of like-minded countries, the Russian Federation continues to combat colonialism in all of its forms, first and foremost by helping to build a genuinely multipolar world based on equal and mutually beneficial interstate relations, free from diktats, free from external interference. Specifically, in December, the group of Friends in Defense of the UN Charter submitted a resolution that was adopted by the General Assembly, a resolution proclaiming the 14th of December the International Day Against Colonialism. As the situation we're discussing today shows, Africa still needs such active international efforts aimed at anti-colonialism. We call on all sensible states interested in helping to build a genuinely independent and successful African development models to join us. In the anti-colonial context, in relation to the situation in Somalia, it's also important to repeat our principled position. Voluntary financial assistance to Somalians is provided free of charge. It cannot be preconditioned on the fulfilling of political requirements. By way of conclusion, we'd like to express our solidarity with the government of the Federal Republic of Somalia and the Somalian people during this difficult period. Russia will continue supporting Mogadishu in combating both international terrorism as well as efforts to exert unilateral political and economic pressure. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Russian Federation for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of France.
Mr. President, I'd like to begin by thanking the Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Khaled Kiari, for that briefing. France recalls its commitment to the unity, territorial integrity, and the sovereignty of Somalia in accordance with the United Nations Charter. France welcomes the recent renewals of the sanctions regime targeting the terrorist group al-Shabaab and the mandates of the African Union Support and Stabilization Mission, as well as the UN Support Office in Somalia. This represents decisive support provided by this council to Somalia in its quest for security and stability. It's essential to avoid any action liable of compromising peace and security in Somalia, as well as in the Horn of Africa and the Gulf of Aden. Internal disputes within Somalia must be resolved in a negotiated manner in the context of a dialogue between all Somali stakeholders. easing of political tensions within the country is crucial to effectively counter terrorism and to enable the smooth conduct of future elections. Mr. President, I wish to recall in conclusion that, faithful to the spirit of the New York Declaration adopted by the General Assembly on the 12th of September this year, France will continue to stand opposed to any forced displacement of the civilian population and to any violation of international law and international humanitarian law in particular. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France for the statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of Slovenia. I would like to thank Assistant Secretary General Chiari for his briefing. For 2 years at this table, we have been unambiguous in opposing two threats to international order and global security: the erosion of multilateralism and the disregard for international law. Colleagues, foreign interference does not arrive only with tanks and missiles. It also takes quieter but no less damaging forms: political pressure and actions that undermine sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence. These principles are not abstract, they're being tested today. It is in this context that we express our deep concern regarding the action taken against Somalia last week. It risks further destabilizing a region already burdened by multiple political and security crises. Slovenia reiterates its support for the unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia. Only Somalis themselves can determine the future of their country, free from unwarranted external interference. It is up to Somalis of Somalia and of Somaliland to agree in dialogue on a system of governance that protects the interests of all parts of Somalia. Efforts of international community should be directed towards supporting meaningful dialogue between Somalia and Somaliland. We encourage the United Nations, the African Union, and regional organizations to offer their support in this regard, should Somalis desire it. Colleagues, the current situation must not distract from Somalia's urgent security priorities, including the fight against terrorism. The international community should work together with Somalia, supporting its efforts through cooperation and sustained engagement. Colleagues, I have to address the issue of Palestine and comparison as raised by the United States. Slovenia recognized Palestine as an independent state. We did so in response to the undeniable right of the Palestinian people to self-determination. Palestine is not part of any state. It is a legally occupied territory, as declared by the International Court of Justice, among others. Palestine is also an observer state in this organization. Somaliland, on the other hand, is a part of a UN member state, and recognizing it goes against the Article 2, Para 4 of the UN Charter. Colleagues, throughout our tenure, we have consistently called for peace, not as an empty slogan, but as a responsibility. And we have worked to cultivate that notion through leadership for peace debates. To lead for peace is to place the pursuit of sustainable peace above narrow national interest, to choose cooperation over convenience. It is to recognize that sustainable peace is achieved not outside of, but through the United Nations itself. The United Nations is only as strong as the commitment of its member states. And for this reason, what the organization needs today is a mobilization of all of us, of its member states, for an alliance for peace. I resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to the representative of Israel.
For his briefing here this afternoon. I wish to make it clear, Israel's engagement with Somaliland has a long and consistent record. In 1960, when Somaliland emerged as an independent state, Israel was among 35 countries that formally recognized its independence. In the late 1980s, under the regime of Siad Barre, Somaliland's civilian population was subjected to mass atrocities. Entire cities were destroyed. Civilians were deliberately targeted. These crimes are now widely recognized as the Isaac genocide. At the time, Israel was the only country to formally raise these atrocities in this very council. On May 2nd, 1990, Israel's then acting permanent representative, Yochanan Bain, submitted this letter to this very council, warning of grave human rights violations in Somalia, including the destruction of Hargeisa and the targeting of civilians. This document forms part of the official record of the Security Council. That record underscores the consistency of Israel's engagement, grounded in concern for human rights, accountability, and legal principles. That history provides essential context for the discussion surrounding Israel's recognition of Somaliland today. Let me be clear, Israel's recognition of Somaliland is neither provocative nor novel. It is a lawful, principled acknowledgement of a long-established reality, consistent with international law and aligned with the values that this council is meant to uphold. Mr. President, Somaliland's modern political history is clear and well documented. On June 26, 1960, the former British Somaliland Protectorate attained independence as the state of Somaliland. In the days that followed, prior to its voluntary union with the Trust Territory of Somalia on July 1, 1960, Somaliland was recognized by 35 states, including the United States, the United Kingdom, France, China, Egypt, Ethiopia, the Soviet Union, and Israel. Somaliland entered that union as a recognized sovereign entity, exercising its right to self-determination. That union failed to produce a durable or fully ratified constitutional settlement. Political marginalization, repression, and mass violence followed. When the Somali central government collapsed, Somaliland reasserted its sovereignty in May 1991. For more than 3 decades since, it has existed entirely outside the authority of Mogadishu. Since 1991, Somaliland has consistently met the objective criteria for statehood under customary international law, as reflected in the Montevideo Convention. 1, it has a permanent population. 2, a defined territory. 3, an effective government. 4, the capacity to conduct foreign relations. In fact, Somaliland has held regular competitive elections, ensured peaceful transfers of power, and maintained effective governance and security throughout its territory. In a region marked by instability, Somaliland has demonstrated continuity, responsibility, and restraint. Moreover, Somaliland's engagement with the international community is already sustained and practical. Several states maintain representative, liaison, or economic offices in Hargeisa. These relationships reflect ongoing diplomatic, economic, and development cooperation. They also reflect an acknowledgement in practice of Somaliland's capacity to govern responsibly. Israel's recognition builds on this reality. This step was taken as an exercise of sovereign authority, consistent with international law and long-standing diplomatic practice. It is not a hostile step towards Somalia, nor does it preclude future dialogue between the parties. Recognition is not an act of defiance. It is an opportunity to promote clarity, an opportunity to encourage responsibility, an opportunity to strengthen stability in the Horn of Africa. This recognition is forward-looking. It aligns with the spirit of the Abraham Accords: cooperation over isolation, pragmatism over paralysis, and partnership over perpetual conflict. Somaliland has demonstrated a willingness to govern responsibly, to secure itself, and to engage constructively with regional and international partners. This trajectory is also not without precedent. In the case of South Sudan, early engagement by individual states, including Israel, preceded broader international recognition and supported international integration and stability. Reality was acknowledged first. Consensus followed. Mr. President, the question raised by Israel's recognition of Somaliland is not whether international law permits acknowledgement of long-established facts. It does. The question is whether this council is ready to engage with reality as it exists. Somaliland's historical sovereignty, more than 3 decades of effective self-governance, and demonstrated capacity to act as a responsible international partner meet the legal criteria that guide recognition. Israel has aligned its foreign policy with this reality. This approach reflects the spirit of the Abraham Accords. It is grounded in international law and directed towards greater stability and security in the region. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Israel for the statement. The representative of Somalia has asked for the floor to make further statement. I give him the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me again the floor. Before proceeding further, I want to make additional remarks in my capacity as a Somali representative of Somalia to directly address the claims made by the representative of Israel who spoke before me. I will make 3 points, Excellency. First, actions of occupying power in Palestine and indeed in the broader region are well documented. These actions constitute clear violations of international law. What we see today and time again are acts to terrorize civilian populations and crimes against humanity and forced displacement of a whole community, starvation of innocent people, and killing and maiming hundreds of thousands. And someone doing all these things are lecturing us today what they call genocide and things like that. I'm shocked to listen to the outrageous comments from the Israeli representative. If we want to talk about genocide, it's Israel that's committing on our own eyes every day. He represents a government that killed more than 70,000 people, civilians, including children, women, elderly, doctors, and other health workers, and patients in hospitals, destroying infrastructures, deliberately starving people of Gaza. To come before us, esteemed council, and accuse Somalia of committing genocide is just ridiculous and it's unbelievable. The other thing that I want to add is he has no idea what Somali is and where Somalis are and what Somali stands for. I think the history is a selective history that he has just generated on his own mind. Let me give you some lessons on this. There is a systematic, it's a troubling, Somalia is one country, one people, one religion that fought together for independence from the colonial. And Somalia is again one that's fighting terrorist organizations in the Horn of Africa as a one group, one religion, one ethnic group. And then when you say the Somaliland, that was a British Somaliland, it was a two regions, the Northeast region and Northwest region. And now Northeast region is part of which is 45% of the land and the population are part of the federal government of Somalia. What we're talking about is Northwest, which is also having a problem. Half of Northwest is now all the region, which is close to the Djibouti border. And they are totally against what the Isaq people that you say, Isaq genocide. And there was no such genocide in Somalia that took place. Somalia had a civil war, and the civil war has its own effects. And we believe the civil war was also financed from outside. So to come to this place and lecture us humanity and genocide and human rights and independence and democracy, and we know what you're doing on a daily basis, is just an insult. And I cannot take it without responding to this. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Somalia for the statement. I now give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Majed Abdelaziz, a permanent observer of the Permanent Observer Mission of the League of Arab States to the UN.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. سيد الرئيس اسمحوا لي بداية.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, allow me at the outset to express the League of Arab States' appreciation for your distinguished presidency of the Council's work during December, a month that coincides with the conclusion of your 2-year term as a non-permanent member of the Council, in addition to 4 other non-permanent members, including Algeria. Your membership has been marked by credibility, constructive and objective engagement, and a highly professional and responsive approach to global events. You have strived to uphold the Council's role in maintaining international peace and security despite unfavorable global circumstances. I thank you all and we welcome the new 5 members of the Council, and we wish you all success. I highly appreciate the excellent briefing delivered by Mr. Khaled Khiari, Assistant Secretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs. I align myself with the statement of the State of Kuwait in its capacity as chair of the Arab Group for December. Mr. President, the League of Arab States strongly supported the request by the A3+, backed by other members, to convene this meeting at the earliest possible opportunity to address a grave development that strikes at the core of the international legal order established by the UN Charter, an order founded on respect for the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of states. International reactions reflect a unanimous rejection and condemnation of Israel, the power occupying Palestinian territory and Syrian and Lebanese Arab lands, for seeking to legitimize the secessionist aspirations of the northwestern region of Somalia, known as Somaliland, which seeks to separate from the Federal Republic of Somalia. Israel aims to use this as a pretext for an illegal presence on Arab African Somali soil to advance well-known political, security, and economic agendas that are unacceptable and condemned. These actions flagrantly violate the United Nations Charter and the constitutive instruments of both the African Union and the League of Arab States. Most dangerously, they facilitate plans for the forced displacement of the Palestinian people and the exploitation of northern Somali ports for the establishment of military bases. This was made abundantly clear in the statement by the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, His Excellency Ahmed Abul Gheit, who condemned this Israeli move as an affront to the unity of the Federal Republic of Somalia, a member of the Arab League. He stressed the League's categorical rejection of this act as a violation of international law and an assault of fundamental legal principles, including respect for state sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity, principles that form the cornerstone of the UN Charter and international law. As the Secretary General emphasized, this Israeli action, the occupying power, constitutes yet another breach of international resolutions and international instruments, posing a direct threat to an Arab League member state, destabilizing the Horn of Africa, the Red Sea, and the Gulf of Aden, and gravely undermining Arab regional security, which is interconnected and cannot withstand reckless political ventures or delusional expansionist ambitions that are categorically rejected. Mr. President, in this context, the statement issued yesterday by the Council of the League of Arab States at its extraordinary meeting at the level of permanent representatives in Cairo yesterday, Sunday, 28th of December. So the statement sets out the parameters of the Arab position, which I will summarize. First, we condemn in the strongest terms Israel's recognition of the secession of Somalia's northwestern region, known as Somaliland, in pursuit of political security and economic agendas that we categorically reject. We also fully reject any measures arising from this illegitimate recognition aimed at facilitating forced displacement of the Palestinian people or exploiting northern Somali ports to establish military bases. Second, we reaffirm the Arab League's consistent and clear position, as reflected in its resolutions at all levels, that the northwestern region of Somalia, known as Somaliland, is an integral part of the Federal Republic of Somalia, based on the League's charter, the principles of the League's charter, based on the UN Charter, and the charters of all organizations of which Somalia is a member. We reject any attempt to recognize this secession directly or indirectly. Third, we assert that this unlawful Israeli recognition is part of Israel's broader attempts of the occupying power to undermine international peace and security and undermine
Arab national security, warranting legal, economic, political, and diplomatic measures to confront it. Fourth, we affirm support for Somalia's security, stability, unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. We support the federal government of Somalia in its efforts to safeguard Somali's sovereignty by land, sea, and air. We reaffirm Somalia's rights to legitimate self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter and relevant provisions of the Arab League Charter. We support the federal government of Somalia in any measures it decides to take to repel aggression within the framework of international legitimacy. Fifth, we express our full support and solidarity with the position of the state of Somalia that any act recognizing the secession of its northwestern region is null, void, and unacceptable. It constitutes a blatant violation of international law. It represents a flagrant interference in Somalia's internal affairs, and it undermines Somalia's sovereignty and territorial integrity, with grave implications for regional peace and security. It heightens political tensions in Somalia, the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, and the Horn of Africa. Sixth, we consider Israeli moves as a dangerous attempt to reshape the geopolitical map of the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea off Somalia's coast. We call on the international community to confront these actions as threats to regional and international peace and security, and to freedom of navigation and global trade. Seventh, we categorically reject any form of forcible displacement of the Palestinian people from their land, from their state, or attempts to alter the demographic composition of Palestinian territory, as such acts are forms of the crime of genocide and grave breaches of international law and international resolutions. They undermine efforts to achieve a just and lasting peace and comprehensive peace. In this context, we reject the use of Somali territory to implement these aggressive Israeli schemes. Eighth, we categorically reject the use of any part of Somalia's territory by external actors as a platform for hostile or intelligence activities targeting other states or undermining their security and stability. Ninth, we are ready to mobilize the necessary support for Somalia's government to ensure the adoption of UN resolutions affirming Somalia's unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity, and rejecting Israel's recognition as null and void and deeming it as a threat to international peace and security. 10th, we urge all states and international and regional organizations to refrain from any official or semi-official dealings with the authorities of Somalia's northwestern region, Somaliland, outside the framework of Somali sovereignty. We affirm that any infringement of Somalia's territorial integrity constitutes a hostile act against the Somali state and Arab and African states. It violates international law. Perpetrators of such acts will be held fully accountable under international law. The Arab League Secretariat, in close coordination with the government of the Federal Republic of Somalia, the AU Commission, and the UN Secretariat, will work to counter Israel's recognition of Somalia's northwestern region, Somaliland, threat to international peace and security under Articles 34 and 39 of the UN Charter. We will take all necessary measures to prevent the creation of new hotspots in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea, while ensuring political stability and safeguarding Somalia's unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. In conclusion, Mr. President, it is imperative to treat this Israeli step as a threat to regional and international peace and security, and to compel Israel, the occupying power, to immediately revoke this decision, which constitutes a flagrant violation of international resolutions and the principles of multilateral relations. The League of Arab States also underscores the special responsibility of the Security Council to enforce respect for the Charter and international law, and to compel Israel to revoke immediately this recognition and to intensify global and regional efforts to achieve a comprehensive settlement of the Somali question and restore peace and stability in a framework of full respect of international law and international legitimacy. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Abdelaziz for his statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Turkey.
Mr. President, thank you for convening this meeting at a time when the principles of international order are once again openly challenged. We also thank ASG Chiari for his briefing. Following up on the joint statement issued on 26 December by the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of a broad group of countries, including Turkey, as well as the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, I will make 3 points today. First, Turkey firmly rejects Israel's announcement, which constitutes a clear and serious violation of international law and the Charter of the UN. Unilateral recognition of a region that is a part of a sovereign UN member state directly undermines principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and non-interference. This announcement constitutes another example of the Netanyahu government's unlawful actions aimed at creating instability at both regional and global level. Such conduct cannot be normalized, ignored, or can be excused. Secondly, this announcement sets a dangerous precedent with far-reaching consequences. Undermining sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia, a UN member state, is a blatant threat to international peace and security and risks encouraging fragmentation and instability, particularly in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea. Moreover, this step by Israel, who persists its expansionist policies and which spares no effort to prevent recognition of the state of Palestine, amounts to an explicit intervention in Somalia's internal affairs. Decisions regarding the future of the Federal Republic of Somalia and the Somaliland region should and will be taken by the Somalis alone. Thirdly, Turkey reiterates its full and unwavering support for the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia over its entire territory. We reject any measures aimed at undermining Somalia's unity or weakening its internationally recognized borders, as well as its focus and efforts to combat Al-Shabaab terrorism, which we support. We also reject any attempts to link this step to broader agendas that violate international law, including efforts aimed at the forcible displacement of the Palestinian people from their land, which are unacceptable in principle and must be rejected in all its forms. Mr. President, Turkey remains firmly committed to peace and stability in the Horn of Africa. We will continue to stand by the federal government and the people of Somalia and work relentlessly with regional and international partners toward this end. In this context, we expect the Security Council to uphold its responsibilities under the UN Charter and to respond clearly to actions that threaten the sovereignty of a UN member state, as well as international peace and security. We also call on all UN member states to explicitly reject Israel's announcement recognizing the independence of the Somaliland region of the Federal Republic of Somalia. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Turkey for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Djibouti.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, Djibouti wishes to reiterate its gratitude to Slovenia for convening this urgent meeting on a matter of profound consequence for international peace and security and for the stability of our region, the Horn of Africa. I want to thank ASG Khalid Ghayari for his briefing. Djibouti fully aligns with the statement by the A3. It also endorses the many important statements by the AU, IGAD, the Arab League, and the OIC, as well as the 21 countries in the region and beyond, have condemned the actions by Israel, which took the unilateral decision to recognize the breakaway region, the so-called Republic of Somaliland. This decision is in direct violation of established international norms and legal principles. These norms are embedded in the founding text of the African Union and its constitutive act, which has the stated objective of defending the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence of its member states. Respect for another state's sovereignty and territorial integrity is an essential principle of the UN Charter. Accordingly, the UN Security Council has insisted in its resolutions on respect for Somalia's territorial integrity and unity. Today, Israel's reckless decision undermines these principles, defiantly violates the UN Charter, arrogantly challenges the authority of this council as it is wont to do, and threatens the foundation of the international legal order. It amounts to intervention in Somalia's affair insofar as this action foster the independence of Somaliland or the breakup of Somalia. It constitutes an unlawful transgression of the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the political independence of the Federal Republic of Somalia, of which Somaliland is a constituent part. It sets an extremely dangerous precedent and encourages further fragmentation. Mr. President, such unilateral actions risks inflaming tensions within Somalia and across the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea, emboldening armed groups, bolstering terrorist groups, and unraveling the hard-won gains of the United Nations, the African Union, and the Somali government in our collective efforts to promote peace, security, and stability in the country. In this regard, this council should take very serious note of the analysis made by the Somali government on the potential security ramifications of the destructive move by Israel in its press release dated December the 26th, 2025, as well as the various declarations made by concerned countries and organizations in the region and beyond. We also take note of the federal government's decision to reject the forced relocation of Palestinians in Somalia, as this is a crime under international law. By virtue of its sovereignty, Somalia enjoys the full range of sovereign powers of its territory and the activities taking place therein. Monsieur le Président, ce faux contrat est le produit de
President, this false contract is the result of extreme distress, which is impossible to understand, which some